Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Virtual Grand Canyon Star Party. I'm Ranger Raider Lane, the National Park Service coordinator for the event. And for 31 years running, Grand Canyon has been celebrating our pristine night skies through this annual Grand Canyon Star Party. Now, ordinarily, we invite hundreds of astronomers and thousands upon thousands of visitors to the park to enjoy 8 nights of some of the darkest night skies in the United States. Now, each evening is typically kicked off with a special guest speaker in our theater. That's followed by telescope viewing, constellation tours, night sky photography workshops, and much, much more. Next year's Grand Canyon Star Party is June 18th through the 25th, 2022. So mark your calendars and cross your fingers that we'll be able to celebrate that on site next year. And this year, we're bringing the Star Party into the virtual realm once again. And we have a whole host of incredible speakers for you tonight and over the next several nights. And before we introduce our special guest speaker this evening, I just have a few entities I'd like to thank from the National Park Service for helping to put on this event. Number one, I'd like to thank Grand Canyon Conservancy. Now, they're the park's official nonprofit partner, and they do incredible work preserving the dark skies here over Grand Canyon and beyond. I'd like to thank the International Dark Sky Association. They're the entity that certified Grand Canyon National Park as an international dark sky park back in June of 2019. I'd like to thank the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association. They're the group that has been coming up here for decades, volunteering their time, sharing their equipment and their expertise with the visiting public at every Grand Canyon Star Party, since it started back in 1990. I'd like to thank the Society for Cultural Astronomy of the American Southwest, finally, and they helped organize many of the speakers that we have for the 2021 Virtual Grand Canyon Star Party. So thank you to them. And with that, I want to introduce tonight's special guest speaker. Tonight, we are speaking with Bertram Savadawa. Bertram is Hualapai and Havasupai from his father and Hopi from his mother. He is a self-taught artist with a focus on two-dimensional art and Katsina doll carving. His interest in astronomy has been with him since he was young, and he's since gone on to speak at events such as the Society for Cultural Astronomy in the American Southwest Conference and at renowned locations such as Lowell Observatory. Currently, he is a tour guide for his one-man operation, Ancient Pathways Tours, operating out of Hopi. Bertram, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really honored and excited to have you with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, thank you again for allowing me to be here to help present and share a tidbit of Hopi teachings of astronomy, understandings of our people. But just to elaborate more from that introduction, I am a member of the Corn Clan and from the Third Mesa village of Oraibi, commonly known as Old Oraibi. And with the teachings and understandings that I do have and been instilled with, it would all come from elders such as my late grandfather, Valjean Joswema, who was sort of one of the backbones of that understandings of the common teachings of our Hopi astronomy and constellations, and other elders that he knew that were strong into that teaching and understandings. Even like how the image that is behind you, the Desert View Watchtower on the east side of the Grand Canyon, the late artist Fred Capote also, has depictions of some of the constellations that is so, say, esoteric to one of the men's societies. But it's, I just generally state, we don't just blatantly show or state everything. It's still just giving you tidbits of pieces of puzzles, and you can continue your own study. So I just generally tell people, the template's up there in the sky, so you have the templates, just to try to see and match up what will be that's depicted on the ceilings of the Desert View Tower there.
So, Bertram, I'd like to ask a few questions, just maybe have a conversation here.
Okay, yeah.
So could you describe to our online visitors what the Hopi mesas are like? You mentioned there's 3 mesas. What are those Hopi mesas like? What's the landscape like? What are the villages up on the top of the mesas like? And what was it like, sort of, what's it like living there? And just kind of describe that whole scene for us.
Okay, well, the first 8 years of my life, I was raised in Riverside, California. So in a city setting, English was my first language. My parents separated, then I moved out to Hopi with my mother. Total immersion into the living conditions, the culture, and the language. But our land of the Hopi mesas, we do have valley floors where a lot of the agriculture is done in the fields of dry farming techniques, as it's described by the archaeologists. No watering system or no irrigation. We do have these Cretaceous Dakota sandstones that are the formations of our mesas and buttes. But south of our Hopi villages, we do have volcanic dormant cores. So not say the rolling hills you see at the base of the mountain there by Flagstaff or the San Francisco peaks. We do have these volcanic cores, points and buttes that are south of our village. Uh, you have different types of clays underneath the underlying topsoils of our valleys. So that helps with some of the moisture retention of snowmelt and rainfall. So as our Hopi people perform and conduct the ceremonies and prayers, part of that is invoking of the moisture of the clouds, depending on the seasons as well. You know, winter times, winter ceremonies, praying for snow. Summertime, spring and summer, then it's for the rains. And very organic, traditional heirloom seeds that we have. So that's with that technique of dry farming to not be soaking or watering. Definitely change the genetics of it. But eventually, there's even evidence of, say, like impressions of seashells, or I guess yeah, tube worm fossils that I found in the mesa edges. Even you could see evidence on the what I call the patina or the desert varnish of the manganese oxide surfaces on the outer surfaces of Cretaceous Dakota sandstones. There's even evidence of water ripples. So talking about that description of the flood, you know, we have that evidence of 60 to 80 million years ago, there was once, you know, the ocean, the water around, and these mesas that the villages are currently situated on would have been maybe the islands or peninsulas of that Cretaceous ocean
Hmm.
back at that time. And so you
So
have those mesas and buttes. They're orange or kind of like similar tan, but orange in
yeah.
color as well from sunrise or sunset aglow. But we do have a Toriba formation, which is an exclusive name of one of the springs that's located on Second Mesa. There's a lot of evidence of that whitish coarse sandstone that's found through those layers there. And then the valley floors of the clays that I was describing of the soils are commonly known as Manco Shale, even though my understanding the town of Mancos is right below Mesa Verde in southwestern corner of Colorado.
Hmm.
But that type of clay shales, soil geologies is evidently all down this way as well. But that'll be
Hmm.
the common understandings about the painted desert descriptions because those clays and soils come in variational colors as well.
Hmm.
So that'll be that common understanding. That's what you're looking at, painted
So,
desert.
so you have, that's amazing. I mean, amazing geology out there. You have these 3 mesas, sort of high atop, you know, widespread views of the desert Southwest. And you mentioned ceremonies and agriculture. You know, my understanding is that the spiritualism and agriculture in Hopi is intimately linked. And I'm just curious, how important is the watching of the sun, for example, in Hopi culture, and how is the sun perhaps celebrated in ceremonies conducted throughout the year?
Oh, yeah, well, say for instance, our traditional New Year, the beginning of the new ceremonial cycles will be in the winter time at winter solstice. So that's of an important um, time of year for the renewing and beginning of the year and the ceremonial cycles. Yes, there used to be a lot of teachings of sun watchers, sun clan members, even housing units that would have maybe horizontal slim windows that actually would allow of sunlight to create those shafts in the wall or alignment with maybe a pictorial or even just a scratch or niche on the wall would pertain to maybe even a sun dagger that maybe windows that were upright will have that creation that in my village of Raibi, of Old Raibi, the Sun Clan house, that is utilized as that importance of sun watching of the Sun Clan members for that time in particular. In the morning, a sun dagger will appear through the window and create that dagger on the west wall. And that's knowing that, it's summer solstice time. So there is also the prayer offerings and that given to the sun at that particular time since it's reached its summer home. Going back to winter solstice, that's the translation of my Hopi name. Zava literally means short, and Dawa is father son. So the shortest path, the shortest day out of the year.
Oh,
my
wow.
Hopi name translates to as winter solstice. But ironically, I also did, sell my crafts and carvings to a shop in downtown that is known as Winter Sun Trading Company.
Right.
Where Phyllis Hogan, that she's a ethnobotanist as well too. So yeah,
that's incredible. So your last name translates basically to winter solstice, shortest. Yeah, shortest. Yeah, that's incredible. And so obviously the winter solstice, the summer solstice, these times are really important for the Hopi people. And out there on the mesas, when you're high atop this landscape, you mentioned that you could see the San Francisco peaks, way off in the distance. And to your knowledge, is the San Francisco peaks, or have the San Francisco peaks been used as markers along the horizon, for example, to get a better understanding of when winter solstice or summer solstice is? And is that practice of sun watching still going on to this day on the Hopi mesas?
Yes, definitely. The mountain peaks will have a lot of that understandings, viewings of the time of winter solstice. Summer solstice, it's further away from the mountains. And I would say that lost art of sun watching is not practiced as much, but I think, people just realize and understand, they know there's that movement out there with the sun and moon seasons, where they come out from, which direction or what view, what point. So not just the mountain prominently, but all points, all the buttes and mesas that we see from our Hopi villages, they all have some of that understandings of the seasons when the sun sets looking to the west. Not every village has the same views as well too. Say like for First Mesa, they definitely can't see more of the what's beyond north of the San Francisco peaks, because the second Mesa outcropping just does block that view.
So you're saying there's along the horizon, there's many buttes, and not just the peaks, but many buttes and little mountains and little tiny notches along the horizon that traditionally the Hopi people would use to mark various ceremonial or agricultural times throughout the entire year, not just summer and winter solstice. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Because I was just going to mention as well, in betweens, the equinoxes are also just as important. So springtime, everybody's cleaning their fields, preparing it. So the beginning of the planting cycle.
Hmm.
And then in September, the fall time, the harvest. So they also are important with the agriculture as you just now described. Yes, it is of importance with the agriculture that the equinoxes
Hmm.
affiliate and associate with agricultural practices.
Oh,
But
that's
we do
fascinating.
would see like in the springtime or beginning of May, the cliff rose bushes will bloom their white yellow flowers, and so it just signifies that, to finalize planting all your vine plants. So all your melons, pumpkins, squashes, gourds, beans, to be all the seeds to be put in by maybe the mid or end of May, because it'll give that growth time by the time of harvest to fully dry.
Hmm.
And then in the corn and other items, there's again certain views of the horizon, or even from the different fauna that starts showing up in the springtime. That's marks off for agriculture. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
again, and then we'll see the certain constellations coming in seasons as well. So yeah.
So that's also fascinating, Bertram, and like what what importance, we talked about the sun and the importance to watching the movements of the sun along the horizon to mark different ceremonial and agricultural times. What role, if any, does the moon play in Hopi culture, or the Hopi calendar, if you will?
Oh, in our teachings of the moon names, each month has their particular name affiliated with the moon description. So
Hmm.
January, a lot of maybe snow, moisture moon.
Hmm.
February will be the purification or cleansing moon. So around that time of season, the parallel that I align that with is maybe perhaps Mardi Gras or
Hmm.
Fat Tuesday.
Hmm.
Yeah, you let your hair hang loose and hoop and holler, and then the next morning you go in for cleansing and purification as Lent. So
Hmm.
these moon cycles were in our modern calendar as months. They do have moon name descriptions for them. So like April, the month to build your windbreaks, the brush and vegetation are put up like fences. So that way it captures all of the topsoil drifting away from the winds.
Hmm.
Or Isimuya, just because maybe some of the windows don't have completely good sealant around it, that you kind of hear the wind blowing through and makes that kind of sound in the through the panes of the windows. So
Yeah.
Isimuya. So it's the description of the sound that the wind blowing through the brush and vegetation, or even in the trees, that you will hear.
Okay.
So not all villages say accurately have the same names for each month or moon. Some again will be variations. So in linguistics, our Hopi language is one common language, but we have four dialects that people are speaking.
Oh, wow.
From the
That's
first,
really
second,
interesting. Yeah.
third Mesa.
Oh, wow. So like that's really interesting how, the month in, Western culture, as is derived from moon, moonth, the month, but it seems like the Hopi culture took it a step farther and named each month after a different moon, as opposed to, the Western culture, January, February, March, April, May, have sort of different meanings and aren't really necessarily pertaining to the moon itself. So that just seems like it's um, a much more intimate connection with the cycles of the moon in Hopi culture to name each month after a different
Mm-hmm.
type of moon.
Yep, and even all the different descriptions for the moon cycle is also known, like crescent, laying down or sitting down. But then what I've heard from elders, it's a depiction of a bowl, say maybe filled with water. So maybe once when it's going on the going out of cycle, then you start seeing it going upside down.
Mm.
Then perhaps we're anticipating that the rains will be coming as the water is pouring out of the bowl. It'll be the creation of the rains, or say the late summer rains, monsoon season. So again, there's even descriptions for the moon,
Oh,
even for the
wow.
sun. Kuiva, the sun comes out, uh, Dawana Sabe, midday, or like lunch description, and
Hmm.
then Tapki, evening. So, we have the same descriptions for them.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, definitely night cycles with the moon and the seasons. Again, we understand the moon always has its different variations. It's not always a one standard, for every month.
Right.
So even not just sun watching, but there were individuals or certain, say, leaders that were allowed to watch and study the moon, for
Now,
that religious or their society understanding.
oh, wow. That's great. So, and you mentioned learning some of this from your elders. What was what is that process like, or how did you experience learning about the knowledge you're sharing with us tonight from your elders? How would have star knowledge or constellation stories been shared with you as you were growing up through your elders?
Well, it say would not be just so open and easily, exposed.
Hmm.
What was described. They just get to understand you or know how you are. Saying if you are willing to maybe listen and learn. But I was a youngster still playing around, but
Hmm.
these elders, would be always talking. Maybe sometimes, yeah, we catch certain information or what they're sharing, and then just keep playing. But eventually it does stick with you and stay with you. But a lot of it is very more, I would say, aspects of esoteric, very society understandings. And yet, I'm a curious cat. So even though maybe elders or my grandfather just shared little tidbits here and there, but growing up in the 70s, and I read books, so I even got my hands on some of the published, researched items from like the Peabody or Smithsonian. Um,
So,
that those publications that were published when they
yeah.
studied our Hopi people, and which my grandfather said that was kind of a no-no because there was even exposures of esoteric imageries, culture items that
So,
have
so are
that should
the
not be seen by uninitiated eyes.
right, right. And so that was my next question was, could you share with our online visitors uh, kind of what a society is in Hopi culture? I mean, there's these societies that sort of are keepers of some of this more esoteric knowledge, and what are these societies and like within the context of Hopi culture, and how are there many societies? How does that kind of work?
Yeah, I'd actually say might be part of origins through, say, a clan. Like I identified myself that I'm a member of the Corn Clan, and we have our history migrations that ties us into South America. But the actual understandings, all ancestors emerged from the Grand Canyon, from that emergence place of Sipapu. Uh, Descriptions of, I mean, ears of corn were laid out, and each culture, each race of people, they picked corns that would be their um, future foretelling of who they would be or how they would be as well. And eventually, for Hopi, the short, stubby blue corn was left, but it was of hardiness, longevity, um, to thrive. And eventually, we are known as the people of the short blue corn of the Hopi people. And that's our very major staple that, is produced in agriculture. Let's say for a society, what I would give descriptions are maybe born into the clan. Say, like for the Snake Clan, obviously, they would be the members that perform and conduct the ceremony of the snake dance, which I would kind of give a jokingly description that, yes, they are the snake charmers. They're the ones that know how to be talking and soothing, handling, knowing to connect, with those serpents. And, I'm a total different clan. That's, not my thing, but, that's
Mm,
what they were instilled with. So they're the ones that would perform that as a say, society.
mm,
Maybe those individuals that chose a godfather, or what I would term traditionally as Kiva father, if that individual was part of that snake society, or another description to give would say fraternity, for like in college and university,
mm,
you know, you are instilled in those esoteric ways, teachings, how to be, then you'll earn your badge, or you'll earn your
mm.
Greek letter, or you'll earn your place in the society that you belong to. So that's what maybe that fraternity description might give a little more fitting understandings for ones, say like, you even
Yeah.
have, the niceties of the Masons, but you need
Mm,
that instrument of compass to do measurements. So
mm.
not just measuring on paper or whatever, you're even measuring distance of planets and stars or constellations as well too.
So,
And then yeah, that would be what I term as that born into society, coming from a clan. But then yeah, you have variations of men's, women's societies, the flute, and then Katsina, you got the women's societies, basket societies to learn
mhm.
uh, technique and how to create those baskets. Yeah, there's just so many various ones.
And so, for example, constellation knowledge, knowledge of the stars, meanings behind the stars, that type of knowledge seems to be uh, held very closely within societies and clans in the Hopi culture. Is that just the type of knowledge that isn't freely shared? It really is kept close because it serves um, a sacred purpose, or it's sacred knowledge of some kind. And is that why perhaps it's not as freely shared to the world as some other constellation knowledge is shared? Like, for example, the Greek constellations.
Mhm. Yeah, it's still very esoteric and private. But what I would just say commonly understand, it would, these planets, constellations would coincide in the seasons when these ceremonies or the societies are performing their their duties.
Hmm.
So it still coincides, I would say, seasonally what's still in view and seen, in the sky.
Hmm.
So again, winter solstice, Orion is that very important one. And
Right.
then there's particularly other ones that are important to societies, maybe for, obviously morning star, or even how the evening stars will be placed around the moon or the crescent, just like
Hmm.
that would be like, Venus and Mars and others that are always revolving by or around the moon, or it's, again, everything has its circular cycles, it's never
Right.
broken. It's always going circular in motion. And yet sometimes maybe there's views of movement going in this direction rather than completely circular, that there might be those movements. So that's when, yeah, probing and looking at planets that have multiple moons, you can understand and see that they have their movement or placements each night, or maybe 3 days, 3 nights on one side, 3 nights on this other side, they, and
Hmm.
then everything is kind of evenly divided. So even just like, we've gone through a lot of these, Earth's history, or, epics, epochs, floods, drought, fires, volcanic eruptions.
Right.
Hope we don't have all the answers completely for humanity. Yeah, we can see newer stars. Where, there's the new hoopla about, some years back about the blue star. But mine that really kind of made me have the goosebumps was more of the recent finding of NASA with again the one pulsating and illuminating in blue. So,
Wow.
People took it in probably earlier from other planets in that, like Nibiru, or even just the space station illuminating in blue. But just this recent finding by NASA,
Wow.
yes, gave me the goosebumps. So I feel maybe this is that true, accurate. Again, the blue star that's to be one of the signs.
You mentioned or in your bio, you are a Katsina doll carver. And are there any Katsinas in Hopi culture that are symbolic of or representative of the stars or the sun or the moon or the night? Any in your experience that you've carved and maybe sold or given to people, that any Katsinas that symbolize some of the phenomena in the night sky?
Oh yeah, there is definitely what we call that shooting star, or the meteorite or the comet streaking in the sky. It has a fan of tail feathers to represent of that tail, but it does have a lot of those star symbologies on the facial. There's even one that's kind of looking like a menacing disciplinarian, but it portrays on the head top 3 4-pointed stars, which again, the common one we would understand is going back to the belt of Orion. There's even there is definitely a sun Katsina. Some say maybe there was a moon at one time, but it has not been seen or openly, seen in ceremony. So maybe even my late grandfather mentioned maybe there was even a moon clan, because since he's a member of the sun clan, then again there's always the parallels, opposites, complementary. So maybe there was even a moon clan at once. We're not too sure, but that's what his hunch was.
I guess we should. Yeah, I guess we should clarify for people what exactly, because we're assuming, because we both know, but what is a Katsina in Hopi culture? I mean, how would you explain what the Katsina is to the Hopi people?
What I would give as that description, it is definitely a supernatural being. Kind of reminds me of those figures that you see on the Egyptian hieroglyphic, the big panels of also of the figures, deities, and gods. Humanistic bodies with abstract facials and heads, but they are intermediaries to our Hopi people. We are praying through them. We are not praying actually to them as the actual gods or deity figures. They'll carry the prayers and messages for our people, and offer those offerings to the shrines or specific place that is designated for them to leave of their offerings. But that's my description I give as supernatural beings that are humanistic in body, abstract facials, that are the intermediaries to our Hopi people. Some descriptions are given as like angels or angelic figures, but no, I would say maybe close description from, say, that church description would be more like, I guess maybe like saints in a way. That's the closest I could get to that.
Interesting.
It's only the Katsina clan knows of these actual origins of who these beings truly are, and eventually histories tell there were the real Katsinas that came and visited the people, but they gave descriptions that they flew. So again, just with those star-figured ones, that's my common connection. Those ones came from the sky because they have the stars and
right.
Technologies of space and the sky.
Well, finally, for the last question would be, what about? Is there any astronomical knowledge or symbology that you know of written into pictographs and petroglyphs, for example, around Hopi or the greater region of the Southwest, Do you have anything you can share about pictograph and petroglyph astronomical symbology?
Common understandings, a lot of these petroglyph panels are, again, maybe the spirals, sun symbols, maybe stars, because I'm still trying to figure if they maybe even studied or, utilize full moon illumination with markers as well, which eventually, south of Flagstaff, you do have that with B-Bar V Ranch.
Right.
I do have timelines and degrees of even when full moon time, the pillars of, they call it south shadow, will show up on one of the panels there in the B-Bar V Ranch. But that pillar has naturally, collapsed now. But yeah, there are these seasonal markers found throughout the whole Southwest, or basically a lot of these ancestral sites. You'll find any type of evidence of seasonal markers, either with those petroglyph symbols, sunbeams going through certain windows or doorways, or alignments with, the straight edge of the architecture of the houses.
Right.
That understanding would be like Aztec ruins and Chaco Canyon locations of the large, big Pueblo Bonito. Yeah, how they did their architecture was just aligned truly with, all of these sunrise, moonrise, sunset, moonset. I mean, yeah, alignments, or even, again, where constellations did emerge from.
So it's safe.
Those were like the earlier telescopes, I call them, as those slim windows or the doorway.
Right.
Those were those actual telescopes prior to what we have to view and see the planets with a lot closer now.
Well, so it's safe to say that, I mean, your ancestors, the people who have been here for thousands of years, and to this day, the Hopi people just have a very deep and intimate connection with both the night sky and the landscape. And it's just a beautiful thing to have you on and speaking with us about this connection that is still being maintained to this day by you and others. Is there anything else you'd like to sum up about the importance of the night sky and of the workings of the sun and the moon to the Hopi people to this day, and just anything you'd like to sum up about that?
I would say maybe going back to one of the questions earlier about, maybe some depiction of a phenomena. We have one of these Katsina facials that has crescents on its facial. The name of that Katsina is pronounced Tutumsi. Misinformation, they parallel it to, just because there's, again, that flaring fan of feathers that protrude from the back of the head down towards the lower back, that it would resemble like the Plains Indians feather bustles that they have in these powwow practices of those tribes. So they kind of refer to it, that it reminds of maybe of the Comanche, but it does not even have any type of affiliation with that. When we had that total eclipse, what was it, 2018, 2017, 2018?
2017, yeah.
And the northwest
right
coast area of that total eclipse. In our teachings, you don't look directly towards wherever that eclipse is happening in the daytime. If you're under trees, the leaves and that kind of filter, but when you're looking on the ground, you'll see those crescents, or you'll see that shadowy movement of that the moon going in front of the sun during the day. So that particular Katsina would accurately be have those crescent facial depictions to represent those crescents you see underneath the tree of the daytime, the solar eclipse. That fan of feathers, when the moon is passing right in front of the sun, then you have all of that, the corona, the flares the sun flares, the sun rays that's behind it to depict the crown that you see. So those feathers on
Oh,
that casino symbolically represented the corona, and the head facial was representing of that moon that passes in front of the sun. So
right.
Doomsy pronunciation is relative, close relative. And with our teachings, and this maybe be that teachings for my Hopi people, that particular time when the moon is passing in front of the sun, it is both the sun and the moon coming together in a conference to tell and speak how the state of Mother Earth and humanity is upon the planet. And then they'll pass by each other.
Wow.
So all
That's
what we
beautiful.
are seeing now, it's just, maybe that of that act, maybe give us that type of contemplation, realization, and understandings. But
Wow.
saying maybe not everybody has the same, mentality, thought like that. So,
Well, that's
but that is what would be that teaching that would I would share, saying pertaining to our Hopi people to understand. That is that time when sun and moon confer of the state of humanity and how we are living on this planet.
wow. And that's so wonderful and amazing that it is depicted that communion between the sun and the moon is depicted in a katsina. Is again just another testament to the Hopi people's intimate connection with the workings of the sun, the moon, and the stars, even to this day. And I think that's a great way to end it. Bertram, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us and your wisdom. It was a very great honor and pleasure to speak with you about some of the cultural understandings of the night sky and the sun and the moon from the Hopi perspective. And everybody, please thank Bertram in the chat. And again, please stay tuned for the virtual telescope viewing session premiering right after this talk. The 2022 Grand Canyon Star Party is June 18th through the 25th. So hopefully it will be on site next year, and hopefully some of you all might be able to even come and visit Bertram in real life, as we would love to get him on site here for the Grand Canyon Star Party in future years. And you may be able to discuss with him some of the understandings of the cultural astronomy of the Hopi people. So again, Bertram, thank you so much. And we hope to see you here at Grand Canyon sometime in the future.
Yes, definitely. I need to get back to the canyon again, and it'll probably be a different experience, and it will be at nighttime.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll get you here. Thank you so much.
Yep. Sure thing. Yep. Kwakwan, thank you for allowing me to be part of this.